get blue for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
All right. Well, welcome to everyone tuning in to the Art Network podcast. This is our 11th episode. It's been fun. We've been learning a lot, Carlos and I, meeting a lot of really cool people, and it's pretty interesting because the way the web works, where you meet an artist, you're in a place, you grab a business card, before you know it, you're in their studio. So we've definitely had a fun time meeting people. For everyone tuning in, we haven't started on Instagram Live or YouTube Live. We're working on that, so we'll actually have the podcast going live. I'm excited to be here with our guest, and we've hit it off. We're having fun flying the boomerang. Just to everyone listening know where they can see your work, reach out to you. We have a cool website, an awesome blog. If you want to just introduce yourself, just mention those. We'll put them in the description also.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Mark Diamond, and there's two websites. One's a legacy website, so kind of funky. It has all the appearance of being designed in 1998. So it has kind of a fun factor. It's more of a legacy website, diamondimages.com. And then a more modern website, which deals more with the 3D work I've been doing the last 7 years in this particular medium we'll talk about. That is diamondimages3d.com. Gosh, the blog is, it's long. It's olaydesigns.com, without an apostrophe, obviously. So yeah, it's olaydesigns.com, and that's rather broad. And can we stop a minute?
Yeah. We're just rolling, but we can keep it rolling. We can keep going. Just say
Lester,
whatever.
how are you?
Good.
How you doing?
And so the blog is it's allohologram.com, and I track about a dozen different technologies for about 40 years.
Wow.
And I'm not entirely sure why, but what we have right now is a convergence that is happening. It's been happening for quite a while, and all of these different technologies have something to do with my work.
Yes.
Basically, as material science improves, for me, I'm kind of a little bit of a boom surfer, and so like I built my first laser laboratory when I was 17. So
everyone's kind of listening to. So the blog and the website and the 3D and the pictures and like all these, it all is incorporated. It's all tied in together.
Well, everything informs everything else. I believe. And it's actually a very holographic concept. For those in the audience who are not familiar with the reference, if you make a large hologram of something, and you say a hologram of the three of you, and you cut it in half, not only will you see, like I'll see you perfectly, and I'll see Steve in the background perfectly in 3D from this half of the hologram, and I'll see Carlo in this half of the hologram in 3D, no problem. But I can actually shift my vantage point like this and see you in 3D and Steve in the distance from this half of what was a hologram this big. And that goes all the way down to a small piece. Did you know that?
That the
Have you heard
actual
this?
No.
Yeah, it's a really pivotal part of why holography has become a very
And you're talking about the actual print, like the ones you have here?
well,
Is
now
that the way
these
that
are
works?
Not holograms. That's a hologram over there, and these are not holograms. This is a medium I've been working in for 7 years only. Holography I've been doing for like 40 years.
So what's the difference? What is this called? This one? Is it a type?
This is known as either lenticular photography
Okay.
or 3D integral photography. It's a type of stereogram. It's derived from the original work by Gabriel Lippmann in the early 1900s, known as the fly's eye technique, and it was then refined in the 30s by a Frenchman named Bonnet. And of course, most of us, at least I came across my first one, I guess, something even slightly similar to this in a Cracker Jacks box when I was a kid. And you would tweak the thing, and it would like animate a little bit,
like a simple folded paper.
There's multiple. There's basically two types of lenticular images you'll find. Some are flips, and some are 3D, and rarely flips that are 3D. But mainly the flips involve the use of two different images that are both two-dimensional images, and it oscillates from one to the next as you shift your vantage point. These are all 3D, it's my specialty. Flips are relatively easy to make compared to 3D ones, and I'm really into things that are challenging, especially since the results are typically well worth it. So back to this hologram business. So that's really my expertise before I got into this. I've been making holograms with lasers for over 40 years. Holography is very much different than every other medium you'll ever encounter. The principles are different and the capabilities are different. I was just explaining to you that if you had a big hologram and you break it into little pieces, you'll see the entire scene in 3D in every piece. And this is unlike any other media that we work with visually.
It's very extra, like it's so foreign to me.
Exactly.
So alien to me.
It is literally alien.
I mean,
to
I've
the way
maybe
we think.
like seen it sometime in my life and like, whoa, and then now just sitting in here, I'm just like,
Maybe
what
you
is
saw it
this
in
stuff?
School. Did you have holograms in school?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like
Like
a
a physical science class or anything like that?
well, probably more at like a museum or
Okay,
different
perfect.
galleries that maybe
Perfect.
I've seen it.
Perfect. That
But
makes total
just
sense.
being surrounded by it, and here, for example, where I'd say 95% of the things on the wall are in
Yeah,
some
maybe
cool
98.
medium. So being like
good.
engulfed in it,
Yeah.
it's just I feel like I'm on another planet. I don't understand how they work.
Well, interestingly, as I said, I work in several different media that are, I work in many different media, and out of those, quite a few are in 3D. So I make lenticular images in 3D, as the ones you're seeing in the scenario. I make holograms. I make stereograms as well. I shoot 3D video. I have 3 different 3D video rigs. And so all of those systems are all 3D.
What you were using when we arrived,
yes.
was that 3D?
Very interesting.
kind of?
That was 3D. That is the latest system that I'm testing.
Well, it's pretty funny how we met when we got here.
Because I was filming when you drove up.
You were filming. They were working. You're filming them. We drove up. We parked. You were doing a cool film on my car. You already knew it was me, right? I think.
Yeah, I recognize you from your show.
And we didn't know it was you. And then I actually introduced myself and real quick mentioned what we do. And you're like, oh, are you meeting another artist? Or yeah,
Right.
and it happened to be you. So that was
Right.
funny.
So.
And you had that the camera.
Yeah, that
so
camera
what was
is
that?
Very interesting. It's we can show it to the audience.
Yeah.
You wanna
It's
grab
right
it?
over there. Yeah, I'll grab it.
It is a relatively new product. It was a very successful Kickstarter project. It's called the WeView. Sometimes I work as a beta tester for large corporations. I worked for Nikon and for Hitachi way back. My very first digital foray into the digital world of imaging was for Hitachi's Museum, which was an online museum that they created to show off their new digital equipment. So they sent me,
What year was this? What?
1998.
Okay.
And so that was the Hitachi MPEG cam, the first camera in the world that utilized a miniature hard drive. It's in the so-called PCMCIA2 format, and it's like if you took like 12 business cards and you stacked them on top of each other, it's exactly that size. And
It functioned for storage?
inside, there was an itsy bitsy spinning disc. Yeah, and this thing the size of a business card, and of 12 business cards, and it slapped into the MPEG cam. The MPEG cam looked, it was not much bigger than this. That kind of looked like this, except it had this top that had a lens. People didn't know what it was, and of course nobody was taking digital pictures because there weren't many flavors of camera.
So is this the first kind of like prototype for a
that
digital
was
camera?
a working model you could buy for, I think it was either $1,800 or $2,800.
Wow.
And they sent me one to be a beta tester, and that was really my first experience in the digital domain for photographs. That and the Canon Sure Shot, which took like their very own proprietary floppy disk. Anyway, to answer your question, this is a 3D video camera and a 3D still camera, and it's a size of 3/4 of a Three Musketeers bar. And a Ukrainian programmer, a friend of mine who's a 3D freak, a new friend, first let me borrow it, and then he asked me if I wanted to buy it, and he sold it to me. Anyway, my first reaction was, I think I started to tell you this can't possibly work very well because the stereo base is much closer than human interocular or interpupillary separation, which on most people averages around 2.5 inches between your pupils. And this is what we call orthoscopic stereo. When we want to create a three-dimensional view stereoscopically, like our 3D binocular vision is stereoscopic, most of us, not everybody, about 12% of the male population and 7% of the female population cannot see stereoscopically.
No?
Yeah.
So it's like basically a direct vision.
If you close one eye, everything goes 2D.
Okay.
And so, thankfully, most of us have this gift of stereo binocular vision. With the individuals I referred to, 7% of the females and roughly 12% of the males, they could have perfect vision in both eyes. But the mechanism in the brain that takes the 2 images and fuses it into one monolithic view of an object in volumetric space is not functioning. And so they have a term I recently learned. I knew of the phenomena for decades, but I recently learned they use the term hero eye, where the brain is biased towards one eye or the other. So basically, if they close one eye, they see. If they open the other eye, they see. When they open both eyes, instead of forming one monolithic view of everything in volumetric space, bam, they only default to the left or the right cue.
In a 2D
and yes,
perception.
Totally 2D. But it goes a little deeper than that, because these people, you'd see a lot more accidents, and there would be a lot more people like missing the glass when they're pouring a bottle. There'd be a lot more problems like that. Fortunately, stereo vision is not the only set of cues that the brain uses to perceive the world in 3 dimensions. So luckily for those people, and for us in general, because we use these cues as well, I would say the big E beyond stereo binocular vision is what's called motion parallax. And motion parallax is simply the experience of moving your head or your body and seeing objects in the foreground temporarily occluding objects in the background. As you move, there's a reveal around the edge of the objects in the foreground. And this is a huge data set that the brain uses to interpolate the world around as a volumetric experience. So even though let's say I couldn't see through one eye, now I only have this 2-dimensional view of the world. However, the minute I start moving, or objects in the scene move, I'm getting a reveal of a hugely robust data set corresponding to where objects are in space in relation to other objects. And we've done this since we were born, so this tells me that there's this things popping up in front of me here, and he's a little bit further back, and then that lamp behind him is temporarily occluded by his head, but then revealed when I move. So all of this information is being used by the brain to interpret the world as 3D, in spite of the fact that I'm doing it with one eye and don't have an actual 3D view. That's another data set.
Is this process, the transfer of like information, is it instantaneous is there like a lag to the brain to process it and create it? Is it instant? Is there some type of like if you think of the speed of light, right? You know, to us it's obviously we don't notice it at all, but on an astronomical level you can measure it and compare it, whatnot. Is that process from what we see to what our brain creates and the perception in the foreground, is that happening like live with your brain, like so
do you mean, is
instant?
there some kind of latency?
Yeah, that we can't measure because it's so small.
Well,
but
I'm convinced that there's some kind of latency. There's even a pretty interesting that you bring this up, because there's a fantastically cool and yet simple way that anyone can film something in 3D and see it in 3D that simply requires a funky, cheap pair of sunglasses. And it's called the Pulfrich method, Pulfrich. And this man by the name of Pulfrich discovered that this is referring to the latency factor. Like, is there a latency? Okay, so if I were to get in your car and be in the passenger seat in the front and point my phone or any video camera perpendicular to the direction that you're driving, so I'm looking straight out the window, 90 degrees to the direction you're driving, and we film like we drive through Wynwood. Okay, now we get back and we play it back on a regular 2D monitor, okay? Now, because I was in the passenger seat, everything is going to be going by this way, right? So on the screen, everything flies from the left to the right, left to the right, left to the right, continuously, because I don't move the camera and you're moving the car. Okay, so a stereogram, a 3D stereogram, like you can take with this camera, or it's been done for 150 years. We've been making 3D photographs. If you are not aware of that, it is over 150 years old. A stereogram simply involves a left view and a right view taken from slightly offset perspectives, usually 2.5 inches, right? That's a basic stereogram. But now, at 30 frames a second, we have this long piece of video, which is nothing but the left view, and then the right view, and then the left view, and then the right view. And then, so as we're moving, we're capturing this long string of stereograms effectually, because from moment to moment as you drive, the frames revealed on the screen are a little bit to the right, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the right, and so on. So, by taking an old pair of sunglasses, and I have 2 different pairs here that cost me $5 each. I recommend doing it with cheap pair. So one pair is missing the right, and one pair is missing the left, and it depends on the footage that I'm trying to see on the screen, and that's when I pull it out of a drawer. In the case of this imaginary footage we just did in your car, as I said, everything is moving from the left to the right, so what I want to do is create a lag in my brain's perception of the right image, which is going to be the next view, So simply by popping out the left lens, so it's clear, and leaving the dark one on the right eye, and pushing play and play back the video, the entire freaking thing, entirely in 3D. Entire thing in 3D. The guy, Pulfrich, discovered that by having either a neutral density filter or a dark pair of sunglasses, in one lens, that tiny lag of the brain's interpretation of the dark scene, because it's dark, the brain takes some fraction of a second to see it later. In the meantime, your left eye is getting the fresh first view. The whole damn thing's in 3D. The Rolling Stones used it in a halftime show for the Super Bowl, maybe 20 years ago.
So
And what they did was they had a bunch of automated robotic camera, like jibs on the stage, and for the entire song, which is only, 3 minutes long, the cameras were all on little cranes robotically moving, always moving in the same direction, always moving in the same direction. And so obviously for an hour
was
and a
this
half,
able to be recorded?
yeah, everybody at home. Basically for
What's
$1.
the name of it?
Well, it was the Rolling Stones
performance?
Super Bowl halftime show in 3D.
Wow.
And so
you don't know what's...
I don't know what year it was,
okay.
but it's probably 20 years ago. And if you went to 7-Eleven, instead of everybody having to engineer their own pair of glasses, that you went to 7-Eleven, they were part of the promotion. For $1, you would get these cardboard glasses that were clear in one, and a little bit of a gray in the other one. And bam, when the Super Bowl halftime show started with the Rolling Stones, you saw the whole thing in 3D.
Are you telling me you went to the Super Bowl?
No,
Oh.
but I went to 7-Eleven and I bought them for $1. And that's when, oh, you know, that's the one phone I didn't disarm. I'm sorry.
It's
Let
okay.
me see if I can disable that.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah,
Hey, it's a joy to see you.
the Rolling Stones, huh?
We'll check that out.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, yo, 120 years 3D, dog.
Look, look at that camera, move it over there, check his angle there, check this angle.
That one's good.
Check that one up there.
So we're going to move this one too?
Nothing, yeah. Well, hope everyone's enjoying this. I like this episode because
You got a minute or what?
there's so much information.
You're welcome to sit in.
And yeah. I guess we can. Hold on, let me clap.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the agave.
So we got like that.
Yeah.
Does it have all of
Have you seen
us?
that dog before? Yeah.
Does it have
I
him?
was waiting for a tequila,
Behind
maybe,
them?
but you'll do. Somebody throws it.
No.
Yeah, we'll probably another like 45 minutes. Yeah. We'll be back in
More.
here.
Right there. Just,
Later.
yeah.
Oh, we can do it.
And then so then I'll just clap again.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great. Well, that's
Good idea.
no time. I like that.
That way they record it.
I mean, I saw this and I thought, oh, it's a no-brainer.
Commercial break.
Oh, that's great.
Yo, we haven't posted that guy's stuff anymore.
Sweet. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye. If you ever need a genius dentist, this is the guy. All right.
I'll clap again. Go ahead, you're good.
Okay.
You want to move up a little bit? Okay. Well, thank you for watching our commercial break there. We actually have a cool little commercial.
Okay, so that worked out all right then.
Yeah, we'll throw it in. We haven't been putting it, and it's not even a commercial. It's an artist who does calligraphy,
Beautiful.
like really nice. Well, I don't know if calligraphy is specifically a type, but he does really nice 3D lettering.
Beautiful.
And he's very talented. He has a pretty big following, and he's creating a hashtag called "Our Time Has Value," and
nice.
he's making it like a global cause, and
Nice.
he's having artists put hashtag "Our Time Has Value" in their art form, and then he's doing like a global campaign. So that's a minute commercial. You'll probably see it when
Oh,
you
cool,
put it.
cool, good. So it gives you an excuse.
Yeah. So we left
hopefully
off
they
with
won't be
this.
doing too much more sawing.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, these podcasts, they're definitely challenging, having the camera stay on for a whole like hour and capturing audio, not having distractions. It's been a learning process, a learning curve.
Cool.
Yeah, so did you watch the Super Bowl performance like from your TV with your glass on,
Absolutely. Yeah. And since then, you know, I mean, that was many years ago. If I'm watching TV and there's something comes on that is there was some travel show about the coast that was traveling up the coast of Italy, and shot from helicopters, which is what I do, and but in 3D. So most of the time, unless they stopped to like circle a castle or something, they were basically going up the coast in the same direction. So I instantly went to my drawer, pulled out the right glasses because they were going this way, so I knew I needed to get a dark lens in my left eye. I popped them on and I watched the rest of the show in 3D. And I was probably the only person on earth watching this broadcast in 3D because nobody really talks about this stuff.
So this method, is it? Did you
Yeah,
reference
the
it?
Ulfric method.
So is it like a science? Is it a theory? Did
Not
it
theory, you
prove
can do it
something?
yourself.
So it goes with like the way the eye works, the brain,
The
and
brain, how the brain is processing. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think might be a helpful way to intelligently approach your question, which was, do we perceive reality or at least light instantaneously? And I have to believe it's not instantaneous. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Just like if you put your hand on a stove, it would probably take you some part of a second to figure out how to shape it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
And I assume the same with taste and
Yeah.
smell.
It's not going to be happening instantly. Interestingly, well, I became a student of human visual perception when I first built my first laser lab because I started seeing a lot of things that I didn't understand.
Laser lab. What is a laser lab?
Take it back to the laser lab. I can also give you some images that will support what I'm talking about if you want to punch them in.
So like physics, science, photography, lasers. Is this all like blossoming at the same time? What was first, or?
You mean for me?
Yeah, like
or
what was for you? What was kind of your process at 10 years old, 20 years old? Like, how did you
I saw my first hologram when I was 12, but I was already a photographer. I'd been a photographer since I was like 5 or 6 years old. My parents were both photographers. My dad was a cinematographer too.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Wow.
So we were living in Panama. My parents lived in Panama, and I was born there. And he worked as a stringer for the NBC Huntley Brinkley Nightly News show in the 60s, or actually through the 50s into the early 60s. And so he was based out of Panama. So if there were insurgents in the mountains of Bolivia, or an earthquake in Nicaragua, or an assassination of a president, in Venezuela or whatever, my dad would be sent there with with 16mm Bolex movie camera. And do you want to wait for the sound?
Yeah, we can wait. This would be actually the first time we edit it. We always do them raw.
Oh, is that creating a real huge hassle?
Well, just the fact that I don't know how good. We'll clip it out a little bit.
Wow.
But the cool thing about the podcast is we can definitely throw some text up on there, be like, damn, people sawing outside.
Cool.
Sorry.
Cool.
This is the point of the podcast too. Yeah. The podcast is raw.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
We can let it roll.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's loud, but whatever, we can turn it up.
We can try to fix it.
Yeah, we know.
I'm so sorry to keep so rude. You're gonna be around later, like at 6 o'clock, or are you leaving?
I'm supposed to be in Fort Lauderdale for some pre-discussion of some exhibition up there. Just telling these gents, I was hoping they'd use Skype or something. I'd like to not go up there, but I'm supposed to be there shortly after 6 today. You have an anniversary or something coming? You look like a man who wants something put in a to-go bag. There's anything wrong with that. I welcome that.
No, I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean.
No, it's okay.
You're just forcing them to have to edit for the first time. No, don't worry about it. We got saws going outside. It's just awful.
No, okay. All right. Goodbye.
But you're welcome to come back anytime, except
I
just
know.
call, make sure I'm here.
Yeah, I did, but there was, it went to voicemail.
Oh, yeah, because I turned it off.
No problem.
I turned it off.
Goodbye.
All right, see you in a bit. See you.
Alright,
So,
let me clap real quick. If we can just roll it and work on it, whatever. That's the cool thing about the podcast. The people listening are gonna be like, look at the problems they have.
Right. Oh man, for sure. So to try to keep me on track, so you were asking for a historical backdrop. So I was born in Panama. I was taking pictures of my mom and dad. My mom worked for Life magazine, and she was a photographer and a writer too, and actually received the highest award that a civilian can get from the president of Panama. So she's a pretty heavy duty lady. And so I grew up taking pictures, and then we moved to Miami when I was around 10, and my mom said we had a secret language we could talk. If we were online somewhere, she could talk to the kids in Spanish, and no one would understand what she was saying. But that didn't remain a secret language very long in Miami. Spanish is not a secret language in Miami.
Was it when you got here?
Yeah, that's what my mom thought. And so I saw my first hologram when I was 12 years old in the Coconut Grove Art Festival. There was if you're not familiar with it, it's a huge art festival in Coconut Grove. It happens once a year.
Around.
Yeah, 300,000 people come. It's quite something. And back in the day, it was not quite so huge, but there was a traveling exhibit of three-dimensional holograms made by laser that came from the Smithsonian. And I went into this little dark room with my dad, and there were like half a dozen or so these glass plates set up, glowing like red because they were played back by red laser, helium neon laser. And I can only remember two out of the images, and one of them it was about maybe an 8 by 10, a little bit bigger, and it was a hologram that had a dictionary and is this yours?
Yeah, it's okay though.
Oh, okay. It stopped.
Yeah, we have like a bunch. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Plus, are you getting it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you
I've
want
got
to
a
just
date to
email
see.
it.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Dropbox. So
Nice. You just made my day so much.
So there was a glass hologram of a dictionary, and floating in front of it was a magnifying glass. And I will show you this so that something similar to it, so that your audience can appreciate what I'm saying. And I'm like 12, already knew, a bunch about photography, and floating behind this piece of glass, this window, this hologram, was a magnifying glass and a dictionary. And you could shift your vantage point to selectively see different words magnified or not magnified in the image, which didn't make any sense because it's just some kind of picture, but the magnifying glass is acting like a magnifying glass in the picture, and I can move and use it to look at the dictionary floating behind it in the image. And this made no sense whatsoever. And as I said, I was 12 years old, nobody knew how it worked, so they couldn't explain it to me. Plus I was 12 years old, and for some reason people don't stop to take the time. But the people there didn't really know how it worked, they were just displaying it. So that was my first encounter with holography. And fast forward 5 years, I'm like 17, and I read a little article about the New York School of Holography opening up in New York. And as I said, I was already a professional photographer then. I started when I was 16, working professionally, and as a photographer. So I told my parents I really wanted to go up, figure out how this works, and they helped me go there, they paid for it, and I was up there for a week in a laser lab in the basement on 13th Street, the New York School of Holography, with a teacher. My teacher was named Louis Ramazar. He wasn't actually an artist or a physicist, he was an actor, but he was into holography and knew so much more than me that he was teaching the course. And I didn't know anything. In fact, I walked in there thinking that I must know half this stuff because I'm a photographer. It's got to be something like photography. Turns out it was nothing like photography. The rules were different, the capabilities were different, and it kind of was very humbling and very quickly put me in my place that I just didn't know shit. So, but I was hooked. So when I got back to Miami, I told my parents I needed to buy a laser and build a laser lab. This stuff was just too much, and I wanted to experiment. So I convinced them to buy a used laser, and I turned the garage into a laser laboratory in 1975. And it was the only laser laboratory making holograms on the east coast of the United States, south of New York City.
How does that laser create the hologram? Is it like
well, simply
zapping
put,
it? What is it?
The object sits behind imagine the room, and I can give you some support photographs maybe that you can use that you can piece in.
Yeah, we'll get a bunch of different photos and we can put them up.
Yeah, well, some historical stuff so that you can see exactly what I'm referring to. But basically, I built a large table, a 2-ton table that floated on inner tubes that were laying flat, truck tire inner tubes. It wasn't my design, it was designed by a guy named Jerry Pethick. But basically, holography, let me take you back to the invention of holography. So holography was invented in 1947 by a guy named Dr. Dennis Gabor. He was an electrical engineer, optical physicist, mathematician, and futurist, actually, wrote on the future. And his desire was to find a method to magnify that would not require magnetic lenses. Electron microscopes required magnetic lenses that were very, very soft. The results were very, very soft. And so he thought, well, maybe there's a way around this. Maybe we can achieve magnification simply by illuminating an object with a single frequency of light. You know, light is a spectrum of different frequencies, and record on a piece of film the pattern of that light reflecting off of the object.
We only see the white light.
Well, we see a broad spectrum,
Just
but that
mainly
spectrum
white,
that goes
right?
from like deep red to deep purple and violet, that so-called visible spectrum is actually a little tiny slice of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
And
Which
that
is
electromagnetic
so cool.
spectrum includes sound and X-rays and cosmic
infrared.
and wavelengths that we don't have names for yet.
Maybe some we haven't discovered.
Exactly. And so our pie slice of reality, so to speak, is, in terms of our sensorial apprehension, is very, very narrow. Luckily, we've developed incredible tools that allow us to see way, way, way beyond the visible spectrum. And there's even one lady, apparently, if you go online, you'll find her, who has 4, I forget if it's rods or cones. You know, like we have 3 rods or cones that are, I forget which one is which, that is color sensitive. This one woman has quad chromaticity, I think they call it.
We have 1,
We have 3.
3,
This lady has 4.
4. So what is she seeing?
Apparently more colors than you and I.
Wow.
Yeah, which I think is cool.
Is this the only
Yeah,
kind of
for real.
like documented
I think this is
example?
one example, yeah.
So how is that
Why is it relevant?
observed by
By
science
anyone
and
else?
just not her word of mouth?
How do they test it? Well, you can look at somebody's retina. There's microscopes that ophthalmologists use, you know, to look at the back end of your eye, especially if you have a problem, you know, like macular degeneration or something like that with your retina. So anyway, we're getting a little bit afield. So polarimetry was invented in 1947. At the time, he didn't have a laser, which would have provided him a singular frequency of light. He had a mercury vapor light that he used a narrow bandpass filter to try to use one of the peak frequencies of the mercury vapor light. So he didn't even have a clean, pure source like a laser. But when he did the experiment, the idea behind the experiment was if you can record the interference, that you record this pattern of light reflecting off of an object. It's a blurry pattern, but nonetheless, it represents the light wavefront that's emanating off the object. And you did that with one single frequency. When you develop that piece of film, if you have light of a single frequency that's longer wavelength, and you pass that light through this blurry pattern, it will behave like an optical sieve or a template and shape that light into a larger view of the object. Pretty mind-blowing. Not only did his experiment work, and he didn't even use the 3D object because that wasn't what he was thinking would happen. He was just using a transparency with like 2-dimensional words on it. But instead, when he developed it, those words were floating in space in front of the film, floating out in space in front of the film. You can imagine, I can't even imagine, you know, just how mind-blowing that was. And so fast forward to the early 60s, like 63, with the advent of the first lasers, there was 2 guys up in the University of Michigan. There's a picture of one of them up there on the wall, the second one down. His name was Emmett Leith, Dr. Emmett Leith. And so him and a guy named Uris Upatniak at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor made the first laser holograms in the world. And the funny thing was, they were actually working with masers in the 50s, microwave amplification devices that were part of the early, what they call side-looking radar. So where instead of just like a blip on a screen, you get a contour of the object, you get the actual profile of the object. It's called side-looking radar. It's been around since the 50s, but he was doing some of the pivotal work on it. And when the laser was invented, he thought, hey, why don't we try this side-looking radar kind of thing using visible light now that we have a pure frequency of light. Instead of like microwave energy, they had laser with visible light energy. So when they tried it, they made the first laser holograms. And because you see, holography is much closer to sonar and radar than it is to photography. Because there are images involved, we have a tendency to think it must be something like photography, just like I did when I went to study it. And it turns out it has nothing to do with photography. And the methodology is different. As I said, you illuminate your object with a laser light. You're in a room that's painted black. The reason for the big, giant 2-ton table filled with sand was floating on inner tubes filled with air was because you don't want the optics and the laser and the subject to vibrate
At all.
And when I say at all, I mean specifically more than a quarter of the wavelength of light being used.
Wow. So it won't even really vibrate, but
you would not be able to hear the vibration I'm talking about. Mainly, it's the low frequencies that travel up through the ground and whatnot that affect the stability of everything on the table. Now, this is true for working with lasers that are continuous wave, where you have like a laser pointer or a larger laser that the beam is always coming out, versus pulse lasers, which pulse in several billionths of a second or less, and you can capture anything. You don't need this big table and the vibration isolation. That hologram of the red hots, the laser red hots there with the candy coming out of the
yes,
thing, that was done. I did that with a pulse ruby laser, and that's 12 billionths of a second. My exposure time.
Whoa!
12 nanosecond exposure.
How do you capture it?
In that case, I'm in a dark room, as I said. I had a black kind of thing on my arm so that you wouldn't see my arm, and I'm holding the candy up, and the second that I start pouring in space, the laser's fired, and it's frozen in space when you develop a hologram.
And that
It could have been a bullet. It would have been frozen in space.
How do you I don't understand. How do you capture it? Are
Well,
you taking a picture
imagine
or
the window that ultimately the viewer will be looking at is the holographic plate. It's
it's a plate.
light-sensitive piece of material. In other words, it's basically a fine-grained, high contrast piece of film, or glass plate with an emulsion on it, film emulsion on it. And so that piece of light-sensitive material is black and white film, fine-grained, high contrast, very similar to what's used in astronomical photography or X-ray photography. So it's very high-density grains and relatively slow sensitivity. And when you develop that piece of material that was sitting in front of the object, so now laser light's illuminating the object, laser light's illuminating the film, and those two wavefronts of the light wavefront emanating off the object and the one directed straight to the film, those two collide on the film and form an interference pattern. You can get laser light to interfere with itself. You can't really do that with white light because it's such a jumble.
You know what it reminds me of? Just what I've visually seen, like watching physics things on YouTube, the double slit experiment.
Oh. Thomas Young.
Because you have those waves, say they're like...
It's the heart of the whole thing.
Yeah,
You
cool.
totally hit it, man. Yeah, you just gained major brownie points with me. Yeah, that's Thomas Young's double slit experiment. And that does show light wave interference, and that is the heart of holography, is interference. And by the way, it is the same for radar and sonar, except instead of using visible light, you're using radar or microwave energy or whatever, some other frequency. But
So
the principle is exactly the same. Bats use it, dolphins use it,
Yeah.
a lot of different cetaceans use it.
When they use it, sonar, radar, like bats and dolphins, are they creating in their mind like a visual, like they would see it kind of?
Can you believe that? It's unbelievable. It's like if you and
It's like
I were,
seeing around something.
if
It's
you and I were
wild.
dolphins, and this gets really crazy because not only do they use that for visualizing their environment, you could literally tape their eyes shut and they'll have no problem navigating the environment because they're using sonar primarily, not their visual sight, from what I understand. And just like I was describing side-looking radar, they will actually get the contour of you, and they'll know the difference between you and him because you've swum with them before, or at least on the spot they'll know the difference because you're different density. They're not only seeing your contour, but they can tell, if you have a full stomach or not, because they're getting densities at the same time. Just like if you did a sonar scan of a pregnant.
Where we're perceiving it, just...
Oh yeah, we're getting surface stuff. Yeah, and so what's more interesting than the fact that they have this visualization in 3D of what's in front of them, whether it's a shark or another dolphin or a rock or whatever, what's even more interesting to me is that, and I've known this for decades, but I still find it amazing, and that is that apparently they can modulate. Okay, there's a part of their brain that's called the melon, and in their forehead, and it emanates a double pulse of ultrasonic frequencies. That's what's going.
That's what's sending that thing out.
That's the reference wave. That's the reference
Okay.
wave. Okay. And so bouncing off of the object, you get the object wave. Part of that reference wave that goes out is going to diffract around the edges of your body, just the way water diffracts around the pilings of a dock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but part of it's going to bounce, and in that bounce wave, because that ultrasonic wavefront that went out, that double pulse, that reference wave, it is born knowing how long that takes, right? So your distance is determined by how long it takes to get back. But they don't have to think about it. Just like you don't have to think about the fact that light has traveled a shorter distance from my nose to you than from the wall to you. You know, light has traveled a shorter distance from my face than the wall. Now, we know this, but you don't think about it ever.
And
But-
we can't interpret it. Like,
Well, yes, you can. And that's the beauty of stereoscopic vision. You see, light carries with it three data sets. Visible light.
Photons.
Exactly.
Photons
They
carry
with
visible
it-
light.
Right. So like what I'm experiencing now we're all experiencing, is a combined light wavefront. Okay. Light reflecting off of every part of that book, light reflecting off of that, light reflecting off your cap, light reflecting off that microphone. So as light is moving omnidirectionally through space, as it emanates off of let's call it a spherical wavefront that's just expanding off of the little point of the corner of that, and it's also
That's how it expands, like that.
it's a spherical wavefront. And
Okay.
And so from that, well, I can prove it because this the light that's reflecting off that little dot is moving omnidirectionally through space like that.
Mhm.
You can see it, and I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So
So that- yeah,
so it's
that
traveling
proves, yeah.
omnidirectionally, right, as a spherical wavefront. Well, this is true of every point, it's imaginary point of everything.
Yeah.
So by the time I perceive it, if I close one eye, all I'm using now, for instance, is like maybe 5 or 7 millimeter, whatever, a teeny tiny hole in my eye that is my pupil that is allowing in this scene, and in the scene is you and Carlo and everything in this room. I'm seeing it instantly. I see the back of the room at the same time as I see the front of his shirt. But the reality is that the light coming from the back of the room traveled longer
It's further away.
than the light. And
Yeah.
to answer your question, like how can we tell the difference? Because we have the beauty. Most of us have the beauty of an offset perspective. That's where the out of phase perspective is coming from the other eye. So as I started saying, I'm breaking it down. There's 3 data sets that come with a light wavefront as we perceive it. There's the relative brightness, which is described as intensities, and photography captures that really well. There's the frequency of the object that it's bounced off of, the light frequency that is represented, like in this case, very red. So photography captures that very well, the frequency and the intensity. You can capture that in a scene. But the third data set that is in a traveling light wavefront is the phase information. And that carries with it information about where that light is coming from. And,
Directional? Or?
Yeah, relative to everything else. Right.
So like it's like, shoo,
Like now I
Yeah.
can tell that he, with both eyes open, the fact that I have this slightly offset perspective and the mechanism in my brain that can interpret him as a 3-dimensional object in a 3-dimensional scene. So yes, we can get access to information about where that light is coming from that carries with it information about the depth of the scenario. So Einstein used an example just to show you how fast light is traveling. He said if you put a train track around the planet and you
6 times.
6 or 7, I think, yeah. So we know that it's very fast, but nonetheless it's at finite speed. So
The train's moving at the speed of light. It would in 1 second it would travel 7 times around the Earth.
That's what I recall. And it's a great example because, everything seems so simultaneous, except when as you were saying earlier, when you do astronomical viewing, you know immediately from what we've learned that you're looking at something that may be hundreds of millions of miles, if not a billion miles away. Yeah, which is just mind-blowing that as humans,
billions of light years away.
that we even have the ability to wrap our
conceptualize
head
that,
around
yeah.
that, I think is kind of admirable.
Yeah. It's interesting to just think of us as humans, like what we are and how we perceive the universe and other species and things like that. What is I feel like MC Escher tapped into this, but just doing it with his like etching and woodcuts.
I'm totally with you. I'm so totally with you. I really wish that he was alive longer because I would have loved to have met him and turned him onto the medium.
He died fairly young.
73. I don't know if he was that young, but I was like 15 or so, and so
When he was you saw his work when you were 15.
I'd seen his work, but I got into Olaya when I was like 17, and he would have been a no-brainer. I've worked with over 100 artists, and he would definitely be someone I would have liked to work with. But to answer your question, you totally hit it on the head. He had an understanding of the nature of light, and it's evidenced in a lot of the work. A good example would be, are you a fan of his? Oh, great. So
I don't know the names, but I know
so
I
there's
can.
one work. There's one book called The Graphic Works, which is one of his more popular books, I guess. And there's a page and a half monologue in the beginning of the book they wrote called Approaches to Infinity. And I really resonate with it. When I was first making holograms, I learned of him, and I was like, whoa. In Approaches to Infinity, he describes that he started out as a draftsman and just learning how to get the eye-brain hand coordination to be able to draw that which his mind's eye could grasp. That was the first task, and that once he was able to do that, he started thinking about, how about stuff that my mind's eye can't grasp, like infinity? How would I get that across? So he says to himself, well, I can't use an infinitely large piece of paper. That's not going to work. So somehow I'll have to set up within a small area something that's evocative of infinity. And that's when he started what's the series called Regular Subdivision of Space, where you have like
with
one
spheres
alligator.
and grids.
Well, the very first ones were colored pencil, I believe, and it was like the outer skin of one alligator is like the outer skin of another alligator, and it fills the space like that. He went from that. He describes like the evolution of it. He says,
his process. And
yeah,
this
is called
wonderful.
Approaches to Infinity. It's like a little page and a half thing. You might even have it if you have an extra book, and it's probably online because I guess it's famous. And so he says first, he tried to make the eye-brain connection, be able to convey that which his mind's eye could grasp. Then he started thinking about that which his mind's eye couldn't grasp, i.e. infinity. Can't use a piece of paper of infinite size. Let's set this up in a small area. Then he goes from that, because he says, well, that's not really infinity. Then he goes to something called the Circle Limit series, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yes.
Where it's a circle, and then some are angels and devils.
It goes
some are
super small
fish
around
and
it.
birds.
Yeah.
Some are like flowers, and basically they are diminishing by, the large ones are in the middle, in one case, and in some cases, and they diminish by half their length as they. It's like the inverse square law applied to the size of the creature, or whatever, the element of the drawing, as they go to the edges.
And it creates a 3D infinite
Sort of,
sphere
but he was not
vibe.
happy with it. Yeah. So then he goes back.
He wasn't that happy with it.
No.
So
he's describing it in this page and a half thing.
So
like,
he's trying to
think the thing, where these pieces came from.
Yeah, wow.
And these series come from. So it's really illuminating if you're into him. And for me, I just had to kind of like groove and with him and laugh about it, because I was very excited about the idea of, okay, now I can make a perfect three-dimensional image of this thing as close as I can get to perfect in a hologram. How about stuff that I cannot imagine? And that's what pushed me a little bit to start thinking outside the box instead of just showing things in 3D, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do. How do we take it to the next level? And so it was very inspiring to me. And by the way, he goes from the regular subdivision space to the Circle Limit series. Then he goes to he goes back to the regular subdivision space, the original one, and he curves it into a cylinder, and now he's spinning it around in his hand.
So wild.
And it's like, nah, not exactly. And then he goes to, because he did woodcuts, so he's into carving wood and graphically carving wood, and so then and maybe you've seen pictures, these are the real thing in a show, but
I actually saw his exhibit with Dali.
Okay, then you must have seen the spheres. He carved spheres out of wood.
I was all so much that I just remember patterns. Like I remember looking at woodcuts, but my appreciation now for it would be on a whole nother level. Yeah.
Well, he actually, instead of doing flat, he ended up carving these like angels and devils and whatnot that are their outer skins touch,
which also has its own whole message.
Wow. Beyond the symbology, just talking about methodology. Now he has this sculpted representation of his images and this ball, and he's rolling it around in his hand and going, sort of infinity. But it's an interesting little rap. It's like a page and a half. I've made it much longer than it really is. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and a little bit about now maybe what you're doing, if you have any projects coming up, being here in Wynwood. Like, what do you? Boom, 2018. What do we have going on for?
Yeah, it was a big leap. I work on multiple projects in the way that some painters have several canvases going at the same time. I don't know if I attribute it to ADD or just that
you get
stuff gets in the way or whatever. Because I don't have the liberty yet, maybe soon, to just do my artwork and la-di-da. I am not that there's anything la-di-da with that. It's just that I run sort of a baby scale service bureau, effectively graphical service bureau. So someone might walk in that I can help with imagery for a website or a brochure, an annual report, or because aside from the 4 or 5 different types of 3D that I mentioned, I also work in 2D. So I do photography, I do panoramic imaging, I do time-lapse imaging, I do not the 3D stuff now. So I've been shooting VR 360 formats since 1998.
Wow.
I worked for a company called iPix that was like the original spherical imaging company, and so I work in a lot of different. I work in video, and sometimes people need help with these things, so I stop what I'm doing, a schedule to do other work besides my own work. But soon I'll be concentrating on nothing but the fine art stuff and some laser research, which I'm really excited to get back to because holography is the shit.
Yeah.
All this other stuff is really cool, but holography is on such a completely different level. It's almost like it fell from outer space.
So one more time, this is the holography is over here. The red.
That's a hologram. That's a 3-dimensional photograph.
Okay, so 3D photo. That's a hologram.
Right.
Where's another hologram?
We'll have to, let's see, I guess, let's see where the sun is. I can show it to you over here.
That would be cool.
I mean, you have all these locked on cameras, I don't know how it's going to work for you.
Oh, no, just show for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Here's a hologram.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine you're going to need to film these things.
It's tricky. It's tricky with the podcast because since it's like an hour, it's hard to listen to the whole thing and edit the whole thing.
But you're going to edit it.
Edit in a sense of like line up the video and the audio.
Okay, so if you stand here, I'll show you the hologram.
Yeah.
Here, in fact, you hold the door open for him.
Oh.
And then I will. Here, in fact, you can hold this yourself. It's a 45-degree angle to play back. So stand here and hold it here. You're using the sun at 45 degrees, and now you're in. That's a hologram. I did that for Gloria today. Cool. So as you move the piece.
Oh, she's moving.
Yeah, that's what you just rotated about that axis. You're watching 70 frames of movie video footage. Wow. Her on a turntable.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I collect wows.
Wow.
I collect wows.
Come inside.
It's not going to play back unless you hit it from 45 degrees from behind,
Yeah,
from
it's
above.
playing here a little bit.
It is real cool. I mean,
No, but I mean, it's not going to totally pop until you get a point source. In this case, we're using the sun. A point source from a specific angle. In this case, 45 degrees from above.
Yeah, that was so cool.
So yeah, you may want to show that at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
it is so cool.
Doug, you can stay out. We're done yet. Wow.
Cool.
Good. Well.
Wow.
So,
This is
so we
awesome.
got an hour.
Okay. So now you see a killer hologram.
That's it
I
is
made
really
200,000
nice.
of those for her. You know who she is, right? Oh, she's a famous
Gloria
Mexican
Trevi?
singer.
Gloria who?
Trevi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When did you make these? How long ago?
That was probably 20 years ago, when she was totally popping. She used to publish these sort of girly calendars along with the CDs that she made and everything else she did. And so that was on one of the calendars, 200,000 of them actually.
That's so cool.
It is.
Wow.
And it's a fine specimen of a hologram and of a.
So if you have this up in your home and at some point in the day,
No, that would be interesting.
The light,
because you'd be using it sort of as a sundial. But seriously, you'd probably have track lights. and a
oh,
spot
okay, so you
45.
control
Yeah.
the,
Like, it
oh,
works
okay.
perfectly over here. It's just that with a perfectly clear sun like that, it's just killer. Here, it works perfectly fine like that.
Ah.
45 degrees, bam. So yeah, you need to play back a hologram from a specific angle that it was.
Wow.
So what we're doing is we're
So cool.
satisfying the reference angle that was. Remember I was describing the object wave and the reference angle and all that. Yeah, that 45 degrees is the same angle the laser was originally hitting the original master.
How many people on the planet are doing this?
If
If you could guesstimate.
Wow. Interestingly, there's a lot of applications of holography. So as far as fine art holograms, not very many. But when you look, when I say not very many, I mean we get together every 3 years, and not everybody can afford to go. But when we do get together, there's at least 100 people there,
Wow.
maybe 150 people there.
So apart from that meeting, there might be what, another maybe 1,000 or something?
Oh no!
Or
Oh no!
Wow. So we're talking
Oh, no.
microscopical.
My friend calls it a micro niche.
Wow, it's a micro
It's not
quantum niche.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It can be lonely, but it's very rewarding, and this is why we get together every 3 years, so that we're not all, on these islands,
Have you done any installations where it can work kind of as a sundial and it's like an outdoor installation or something?
I didn't, but I believe it was Paula Dawson in Australia, a holographer there, who also is a certified underwater explosives expert. She, I believe, did a sundial type thing, and I think maybe Sally Weber, who's another artist in holography, I think she may have done something like that. I've never really done anything quite like that, but I've thought about it, when the right application comes.
Yeah, it's I feel like there's so much we have to talk about, and I definitely would like to in the future do more podcasts with you and talk
Cool.
about the blog, talk about there's so many things.
Cool.
It's pretty awesome.
We're just getting started now, or are we done?
No, yeah, we're gonna wrap it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, we haven't gone anywhere yet.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. I want to just keep talking. Unfortunately, I have to. Next mission.
Wow. Yeah. There's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, and to be honest with the podcast, we're trying to do at least one episode Monday through Friday,
Okay.
and so we're just looking for whoever and whenever, but we can maybe get organized too with different things we'd like to talk about, and we could just do an episode about a topic or something.
Okay. I'm just thinking that we spend a lot of time talking about things that you can actually look up on the web. How does a hologram work? How does a stereogram work?
Okay.
Stuff like that. I didn't really. We haven't really touched on much overarching things. That
Yeah, I mean,
might-
we got like a good 30 minutes.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
Lord. Okay, that's a lot. Great. Fire away.
Yeah, so how does someone who's listening, because a lot of people listening are creative in their own sense, that's one of the goals, is to create a community of not just people who want to buy art or fans of art, but actual artists. How can someone experiment or do this elementary at home without
Excellent.
coming to your house?
Excellent question. Excellent question. And by the way, I've had like artists and curators, mainly art. I mean, thinking about specifically, I've had artists buy my work, and it's usually one of the highest compliments, because these are usually people who hardly have enough wall space for their own stuff, and yeah, I consider it one of the highest compliments. But here's how someone
That's
at
awesome.
home who's a creative person, if they own a phone
Okay.
and a computer, they can, even if they didn't own a computer, they can immediately start making 3D pictures at the end of this podcast.
I want to know how.
Okay. Now we're getting relevant. So, stereograms, as we've discussed, I guess I'll get a visual. If you're not going to follow me, I will go over there, and if you're not going to intercut it, I'll
Follow
get
him.
the prop.
Follow him with that.
Oh, okay.
Let's go.
Aquí, cójalo.
Oh,
Follow.
cool. I'll do a high-speed version of this.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
I'll bring the other tripod and we'll keep talking.
Cool.
I'll bring the audio too.
Okay, cool.
Do I just hold it?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So now we can talk about, what are we looking at, and how does this all fit together in terms of, I'm going to say the opposite of what you usually hear, which is, please do try this at home. And, so basically, I'll take you back to the mid-1800s, like 1850s.
Okay.
So this is where 3D photography started, with stereograms.
Wow.
One taken from slightly offset perspective than the other. And in the beginning of photography, one of the first things that they did was make 3D pictures by taking stereograms. People already understood that human vision required these left-right images, but there was no way other than drawing to make these images. There are actual 3D drawings, by the way, that precede photography. But by the time photography was invented, they started making stereograms. It's not much different from the 1850s going to the 1940s when this was invented, which I still make, by the way.
You made that one?
Yeah, this is a type of stereogram, left view, right view. So is VR headset. It's left view, right view. So you see, there's really, other than the slight change in form factor and materials, it's more or less the same shtick, but with a different input mechanism instead of a piece of paper.
That's awesome.
So now we have a little brief history of stereography. Images taken from slightly left to right views. This is a digital version of the stereoscope from the 1800s, which uses an iPhone in this case, and you have two images, one slightly left image, one slightly right image. And so when you're looking at these two together, you end up with a beautiful stereogram. And so how does someone at home do this? You use the cha-cha method. The cha-cha method basically involves taking one picture, you put your weight on your left foot, and you take one picture, and then you drop your weight to your right foot, and you take another picture. You just made a 3D photograph, a stereogram. An image from the left, image from the right. Now the question is, how do we view it? There are several ways of viewing it. One way of viewing it is you bring, by the way, you can, for those of you who are bodacious enough to want to explore stereophotography, you can go online and find a program, although you don't need it, but it's very robust, called, and free. It's called Stereo Photo Maker. And you can stick your head into that. But basically, if you use Photoshop or something similar to Photoshop, you take your left image and you bring it into that Photoshop environment with your right image, and you place them side by side and make sure that they're aligned. You can align them. I can show you how to do it real quickly. And now you have your stereogram. And if you, some people...
How quickly?
Well, really quick.
Few seconds,
Do
few
it
minutes? Cool.
Yeah. So basically, do you want me to take the picture or just find a pair?
Yeah, you could just find a
Okay, I'll
pair.
find a pair. Okay, so for instance, here, let's look for some stereograms. Here you'll see some assembled ones already. Let me just go to the head of this. I have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of stereograms. And those are the ones I took on purpose. I say that because you're going to find that in your collection of photographs, you have stereograms. Because you took a picture and you moved a little bit and took another one. And if the subject didn't move, you have that in 3D, even though you didn't know it, and it lives in your stash of images that you've taken. So when I say to you I've made thousands on purpose, it's because I made some by accident and then later got a chance to find them. So I also filmed them from helicopters. So these are two slightly different views. It looks like a continuous thing. Let me find something that is not so obviously doesn't look like it's continuous. So here, for instance, is a sequence. Let's find a nice sequence. So, well, okay, fine. So this is a pond at the Fairchild Tropical Garden. I guess it's building it right now. Actually, that still came up pretty quick. Okay, yeah, this came up pretty quick. So here's 10 of them. You only really need 2. And yeah, just when I said everything was going to happen quickly. Maybe I need to go to the local drive. That might help us all. Okay, yeah, that will help us all. Okay, so here's a lot of stereograms, as you can see. Normally they're arranged left, right. Like here's one I took of Brian May. He's the lead guitarist in the band Queen for the last 40 years. And so here we are at a 3D.
You took that picture of him?
Yeah, and I did that one as well. He also has a PhD in astrophysics.
Oh, that's right.
As well as playing for Queen for 40 years and makes his own guitars, and he teaches astrophysics, and he's a super duper 3D freak. So he was the keynote speaker at the National Stereoscopic Association meeting, which is where I met him. But the point of all this is the pictures are slightly different. You can tell because if you look at the corner, you pick any point of the object. This is that parallax thing we're talking about. If you put any point of the object and you reference it with the objects in the background, so you see here his elbow is floating over that part of that thing, and here his elbow is floating over that part of it. So that table has more of a reveal here than it has there. Only a little tiny corner of that table. Here I have a little more of a chunk of that table. So I can tell just from looking at this picture that these are flipped left and right. This image was the right one, and this was the right one, and this image is the left one. Because my right eye, in real life, would get a chance to see around that elbow. And whereas the left eye, the elbow would be blocking that table, that little point there. So this is a stereo pair that is arranged for so-called cross-eyed viewing. And most people can do this. So once you've taken these two photographs, you put them side by side, aligned, and take the one that you took on the right, and you put it on the left.
You flop them.
Right. And now you can cross your eyes really slowly, and you're going to get 3 images to form. One in the middle, bounded, which is the 2 overlapping in your brain, and one on either side. So what you need to do is, as you slowly cross your eyes with these 2 images, like 4 images will form. And then as they overlap, 3 images. So you have 2 that are overlapping in your brain, and you'll see it in 3D. You ignore the one on the left and ignore the one on the right, just concentrate on the one in the middle. So this
When you
is
say
a way,
the one in the middle.
so you can do that right from there. If you slowly cross your eyes,
Okay.
you should be able to
So I look at.
get his head to overlap with itself. If you slowly cross your eyes,
Oh, wow.
bam, in the middle.
Wow.
Well, yeah, you actually got it right away, didn't you? But don't worry about the focus. It comes secondarily. Just get them to overlap. Sometimes you have to even move your head like a degree to one side or the other just to get them to lock up good. But once you got him locked up, he's totally 3D.
Whoa.
And if you're in that mode now, I can just flip around to 3D pictures and you're going to see
3 of them popped up though. Is that?
It's the middle one that is forming, that is the one you have to concentrate
So
on.
will there always be 3?
No. In this technique, yeah, but you're not even worried about the ones on the left and the right. You're just trying to get them to overlap in your brain.
Does this work on smaller desktop
Yes, totally.
screens?
I do it on Instagram. Yeah.
So you could make a print
I can
of
make
that,
a print. Absolutely,
right?
I've
And then
done that.
people like will.
Okay, you can hang it on, but then you need to cross your eyes to view it. Other methods.
Oh, so the other ones are already cross viewed. Like I get it.
Well, the other ones are meant to either be put in a viewer, or you have somebody who actually knows how to. It's called parallel view, where instead of crossing your eyes, you stare in the distance, and so you're straightening out your eyes. And then, so there's basically two methods of free viewing. In other words, viewing without a viewer. Other methods involve having some kind of a viewer like this, where, in this case, I don't have my phone with me, but yeah, wherever my phone is, and you just stick your phone right in here. And now you've got a 3D viewer. So, and this folds flat. So there's a variety of methods.
Oh, so this makes it easier? A lot easier?
Yeah, in this case, you would use it properly oriented, left and right. You want to have your mind really blown. Look at this. Brian May publishes these books of 3D images, some from his collection, mainly all from his collection. And this was done in the 1860s. So imagine, in Paris, France. Yeah.
When?
1860s. So in Paris, France, 1800s, in the 1860s to be exact, there were a group of painters, sculptors, and 3D photographers that would create these scenarios that they'd sculpt them on a tabletop, and they emulated their thoughts of heaven, hell, and purgatory. So Brian designed this viewer, which folds flat. He's patented this viewer. Not the only flat viewer in the world, but it's his. And so this pops together like this, and he's reproduced these images from the 1800s. Interestingly enough, not only did they make these in the 1860s, but they went on making them for 40 years, all the way up to like the early 1900s. And people would buy them, and then now you can just look right in there, and you'll get it. Right? Does it work?
Yeah.
I see.
Whoa.
And they're crazy. What's even weirder is that most stereograms of that era, in fact, you have to check this out. Millions and millions and millions and millions of those were sold. In other words, it was the virtual reality of its day.
That's mind-boggling.
And there was no TV, there was no radio, there was no movies, and there was no records. All you would do after dinner would be to go sit down with one of those wooden viewers and check it out. And you would have a stack of these things, and they would look like this. And most of them were just like this. It's a card. Some of them had a wrap on the back of what it was about. And these are actual photographs that have been glued on here. And there were hundreds of people that would sit in a factory making millions and millions of these. It was the first and largest commercial application of the photographic process, making stereograms. And so the unusual thing about this collection is that instead of being solid piece of cardboard, these had a die cut here, and the picture was glued in there, a black and white photograph, because there was no color photography. And these come from a family of 3D stereograms called tissues, which are much more rare. And I've never seen one in person, but these are reproductions. And the reason why it's shown in black and white and then shown in color is because these photographs were glued on there, but when you flipped it over, on the back there was a piece of paper, a tissue, that they would hand paint in the colors that they wanted the objects to appear in when you put light from behind it.
They made it even trippier. Wow.
Exactly. And then to take it to one more level, these characters had little rhinestones in their eyeballs.
Yes.
That someone would actually poke pinholes in the card. They would sit there all day long, poking pinholes in the photograph and gluing tiny rhinestones in their eyes, so that
the light.
Right, so they would look super freaky demon characters would actually have freaky eyes.
Mind-boggling back then. Was it
It's mind-blowing now.
Was it ever looked at as like witchcraft or dark like that?
There's, photography did encounter that, holography encountered that. There's always going to be simple minds for lack of a description, who will attribute some demonic thing to it. Probably, you know. Maybe like the church lady, she would have something to say about it. Maybe, I don't know.
The church lady.
Yeah.
How fun. Love it.
So yeah, so now everyone at home can make a stereogram by simply taking 2 images.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another really exciting thing that we want to do for the podcast, when we get more organized, obviously, is with each creative person we meet with, we want to do a quick tutorial, like a really simple 5-step thing that the creator wants to share with the world, whether that's
totally cool.
this, that, or the other. So one of our future podcasts, we can test that out. It's pretty cool.
I mean, if you want, I can set up to show you a laser hologram.
Yeah, show us how that
Okay.
works.
All right. So let's crank up the laser. I'll make sure everything's plugged in. I have bad to this wire. Let me back this up. Make sure it's still plugged in. Probably not. Yeah, that explains it. Okay. Let's crank up this laser. By the way, sometimes I capture with multiple cameras, like this rig. So there's 6 cannons in here, and they all fire simultaneously. You can come around. They fire simultaneously from slightly different perspectives.
Wow, there are a lot of cameras in there.
So they're all grabbing a slightly different view. Maybe I'll leave this on.
Wow.
There we go. Okay. Whoops. No, I'm leaning. Because I didn't attach this. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay, cool.
Damn.
So I'm able to get 24 images in about 1.5 seconds. So that's really convenient when objects are moving fast or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the holography thing. I'm plugging this in, and we'll get some power going. Here we go. And then we'll grab a hologram. Okay. All right, so we got a beam, no beam. Okay. Yep. Let's go through soon.
And this is also, they use lasers for the double slit experiment.
Yes. Yes.
That's like how they tested it, right? One of the ways.
Yeah, back in Thomas Young's day, though, there was no, he didn't have a laser.
Wow. That's
Maybe I've
impressive.
done damage to the cable because unless it's shuttered. It's shuttered. Well, so maybe this is one of the demos I won't be able to do. Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't look good for this laser. Weird. Not sure what's going on here. It's probably. I'm guessing everything else has power down here. Yep, I see power on. Interesting. All right. So it's one demo I won't do. It's too bad. Because it really is something else. Yep, I must have done some damage to the cable. Yep. And it's not shuttered either. No. Wow, so we're down one laser. All right. We'll figure it out. Sorry about that. Bad demo.
It's okay.
Anyhow, yeah, so now you have a little sense of this. What else can we talk about that's pertinent? We got people making their own stereograms. This is a good start. Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you love bananas?
No, I just found them to be free, stackable. I've got an archive going of things. I have a tendency not to throw away my mistakes, and I've made probably more mistakes than anyone I know. Because, well, this is what it takes. All of this stuff looks really simple, or at least, like must be easy because I'm banging it out like I am. But no, for anything that you're looking at, chances are good that it did not work out perfect the first time.
Awesome.
For sure. How do these come together? These are the result of multiple images that are all combined. And so here you're looking at, Here you're looking at 36 images taken from slightly different perspectives. And that's how this technique works. Normally, once you have combined them all into a so-called interlace print, you can't tell what is on the image until the lens is in position, aligned, and it has to be aligned by hand within better than 1/100th of an inch accuracy. So you can, like, I'll get out of your way there so you can see what's going on. So once the image is aligned, let me align it so now you can, I'll back up so you can look at it. So now as you move from left to right, not only is it 3D, but his eyes animate.
Wow. Can you remove it 1 second?
Oh, sure.
Just 1 second.
Sure, so you can see it's just the
before.
raw, that is called,
this is a raw
that's
print?
the interlace print, which is a combination, in this
Of the
case,
photos.
of 18 images, right.
So these are,
Yeah, it's made up of tens of thousands of little pieces, and that's what the program does, is it breaks once you've aligned them, and then...
So this width or something is that
This
matches up
is
with
the lens
print?
material, right. You can see I'm using these alignment bars on the side, and you can see how they come into one solid.
So there can be, are there wider versions of this or smaller
Oh, lens,
versions?
absolutely. That's on a 20 lens per inch material. This is 40 lenses per inch. I use even thinner materials, like when I do CD covers, like over here. Here's a CD cover that I did. This is much thinner. Let me find a loose one. Here we go. Nope, that's not loose.
Oh, so then like they would mass produce those?
Yes, I do mass produce images. Like this is a much thinner material, almost 100 lenses to the inch. I did a couple thousand of those for that guy. So yeah, I vary materials. Oh, this is a cool one. Oh, this is very MC Escher. Very MC Escher. And I don't usually do things that are derivative. I actually run away from any idea that I think I've seen before.
Oh, that's what
Unless
like an idea.
Derivative, where you derive it from some other idea. Yeah.
Try to draw them from
You know,
raw
I mean,
source, like a,
I mean, art and science are very similar in the sense that everything is done on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
You can't do an experiment without having other scientists that have come before you learn about the materials you're using, discover the methodologies that you might be using, etc. So art is the same way. It's absolutely impossible to do anything in art without. You don't need to be conscious of the fact that it's been done before, but and I'm not saying everything has been done before. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have an incredible history going back to cave wall paintings of people working with a certain set of materials. And simply by looking at a book or going online or going to a museum, you'll expose yourself to, potentially millions of pieces of art that have come before you. And at that point, you may or may not integrate this into your working sort of lexicon of visual imagery. But typically, whether we're conscious of it or not, that is happening. We are constantly integrating everything we see with everything else we see and do. From the time we're born, we are logging billions and billions of things. The geometry of things, the colors of things, the functionality of things. We're trying to teach machines this now for some time, and it's a little bit trickier than, it's tricky. But we're getting much, much better, and part of it has to do with computability, and part of it is with the finesse of these algorithms. I have one program on my phone that's free from Microsoft called Seeing AI. I don't know if you've seen it, but basically you point at anything and it tells you what it thinks it's seeing.
oh wow.
Yeah, and if you point at any piece of paper, it'll read it, stuff like that. So this is an interesting area of image processing, which is extremely robust right now. Every major player, whether it's Google, Microsoft, you name it, Adobe, Amazon, every one of them is deep into AI image processing, so-called deep learning by machines. And last year there was a Google project where they showed the algorithm 250,000 images of the Earth from different locations and told the program where the picture was taken, like so many degrees latitude, it's, Bern, Switzerland or whatever he was. And after the machine saw 250,000 localities and where they were, they then showed the machine 25,000 images without telling it where they were. And there was an extremely high accuracy rate, just guessing where something was in a picture, which is pretty impressive. And so I've toyed with it. You can go on the blog and look up, what would you look up for that? Image recognition, I think, yeah. And recognition would be a good one. You'll find it through searching for recognition. But there are a variety of programs that are, I've tried to like totally screw it up by showing it things that were improbable, like Bart Bakes Battle Boy, which is Bart Simpson shoving the Pillsbury Doughboy into an oven, a toaster oven. Okay, so that seemed like like a very difficult thing for a machine to understand what's going on here. Bart shoving the Pillsbury Doughboy into a toaster oven. So I showed the algorithm this picture, one of the algorithms, and it was interesting. It wasn't sure if there were humans in it or it wasn't human. If it was a family, it thought maybe transportation had to do with it, which I get that because it sort of looks like it's getting on a bus. That could be the step on a bus. It's a machine looking at a random picture.
Messing with it.
Exactly.
Take this.
Right. And so I'm interested because I shepherd over 1.5 million images on a daily basis. Not all at the same time, but I'm saying I have my file server represents over 1.5 million images. So anything that would come along that would help me find things is good, and help others find things. So Amazon has something called Recognition. Adobe has something called Sensei. There's one called Clarify, spelled CLARIFAI. Google has their own. So everyone has some flavor of this image recognition thing, and it's really gotten to be interesting because we're at a time where, last year while he was alive, Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk both were quoted as saying that we're most possibly living in a simulation. Mm-hmm. The funny part to me is I can see that we're really busy building that simulation. For instance, we have over 3 billion camera phones. As you and I speak, there's probably there might be 100 people taking a picture of the Eiffel Tower as we speak right now. And that's probably been going on for decades. And now we have all these perspectives, so they're totally integratable. I could actually print an Eiffel Tower right now, 3D print an Eiffel Tower, just in the data set that lives online of different people's pictures of the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
So in terms of interpolating whatever tween frames I don't have or whatever, that's totally easily doable, and there's multiple flavors of that right now. Maybe you've heard of Mapillary. Mapillary basically is a company that is set about to out-street view Google Street View. And the way they intend to do it, they're up to, I don't know how many 100 million images, I think 150 million images already. Regular people shoot pictures out the window of their car or while they're standing on a sidewalk, and you upload them, and they get seamlessly stitched into a monolithic view that you can travel through of the city.
Wow.
It's called mapillary.com. And so it's a lot cheaper to have, people do this than to pay for cars or, to drive around, even if they're robotic cars, taking pictures. And not only that, but you need a lot of cars, whereas I can walk out in front of this place right now, do a 360 or drive down 7th Avenue and upload it, and you'll have a much fresher view of 7th Avenue this afternoon than whenever the heck the Google car was here.
Yeah.
Right. Also, there are certain places, like Cuba, for instance, where there's no deal with Google, so there's no street maps. And there's no Google Street View, but there is Mapillary views. So if you wanted to see around Havana, you couldn't use Google Street View, But you could go to Mapillary, where normal people shooting video and stills out of their windshield and whatnot, or standing on the street corner, have uploaded those images, and there's a pretty comprehensive view of Cuba, in spite of the fact of their, screwed up mindset.
Well, thanks, Mark. We're gonna wrap it up.
Cool.
Just because we're gonna get busting missions right now.
All right, man.
But I feel like we just tapped a bunch of little small topics.
Yeah, we
Pretty
did travel a
exciting
bit.
to have more podcasts with you, learn more about the process. It's been a pleasure.
Maybe the audience will feedback what they're more interested in.
Yeah,
and
of
we'll
course.
pick up on that.
Yeah, and then if you know any other creatives who'd want to be up for something like this, that'd be
Sure.
awesome too.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks again, Mark.
I can show you that I work with over 100 artists.
Wow.
And I haven't worked with him personally yet, but that's Damien Hirst. It's called Honey, I Shrunk Damien Hirst. But yeah, here's Kevin Lito. There's Kenny Sharp. Chad from the London Police. There's Magnus. They're not all visual artists. Some of them are musicians. There's the Telekinetic Walrus, Becky Baxter, Doug Hawks. There's Shepard Ferry. Yeah, I work with a lot of different artists. So I'm always, any one of your listeners who wants to play with the medium and doesn't want to spend 16,000 hours or $250,000 figuring out how it works, I'm happy to translate their vision in the medium. That's one of the things that I do.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again.
And I do portraits when you're ready for your 3D close-up.
Yeah, I was already like
Right, man.
picturing some cool stuff with our logo and.
Yeah, man, I'll be totally down.
Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for everyone tuning in. Make sure to leave some feedback, like the video, dislike the video, whatever floats your boat, and subscribe.